This is the Pilot's News Briefing Podcast. I'm Frank Daniels. With me today is Elena Marsh from the Pilot's Newsroom, bringing us the latest news in Moore County. And it is an election-related story, but one that kind of is far-reaching, it seems like, not just Moore County-related, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it is early voting period. Everyone has been, polls, people are going out. It's been pretty steady recently. Normally about 400 people every day making their way to either Carthage or Aberdeen.
Okay.
So that's just a quick update on how early voting's going. But this story I have been working on in regard to something called the Voter Registration Repair Project. I write a little bit about the background of this project in the story, but it has to do with the court case between Jefferson Griffin and Allison Riggs.
Right.
About the never resident, if that rings any bells for everyone, the never resident voters who did not update their voter registration in maybe accordance with some of the standards that we have today.
Well, and as you say, just that it kind of started with Jefferson Griffin challenging the results of the election between he and Allison Riggs for a North Carolina Supreme Court seat. And part of the contention that he brought was that there were a select number of voters, 66,000, is that right?
I believe
across
so.
the state, and he identified them as never residents in the lawsuit identified them as never residents because of certain, wasn't it voter ID? They weren't. There was no voter ID attached to their registration, right?
Yeah, and so that's something we need, we being the Board of Elections, I don't work for them, but that is something that we as voters see now as needing to go along with our registration. So that court case did not rule in his favor. Those voters were, not thrown out. They were still counted. He did lose. However, the State Board of Elections now has been trying to get some information to update those cited voter registration records. There's about 241,000 in the entire state. So there's just little missing pieces and whatnot. So this story is not really about them, but they are tangentially related. So in Moore County, around 2,300 voters received letters very similar, if not almost exactly the same, as those voters who received a letter to update their voter registration. And these voters are actually not on that list that I mentioned.
Okay.
They're an entirely different thing of their own. They're just underneath the umbrella of the Registration Repair Project, but they're a different thing. These voters that received the 2,300 in Moore County that received this letter are called legacy voters. And that means that these voters had registered to vote in Moore County before 2002. So in Moore County, they have a registration data machine, right? So before 2002, in Moore County, you had to register to vote by hand, paper, pencil. And the only thing that was required of you was your date of birth and, where you live, your first and last name, etc. After 2002, when that database was added to Moore County and began being used by Moore County, then voters would have to register with either a valid driver's license number or the last four digits of their social security number.
Okay.
All those legacy voters just kind of got grandfathered in. They were like, nope, you were here before. You did everything you were supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. You're fine.
Right. You are registered, so we're adding you to the database.
Correct. Now, they were added to the database without those other two pieces of information, either or should they so choose the driver's license or Social Security. Now, with the voter registration repair project looming in our atmosphere, the State Board of Elections wanted these voters, who are legacy voters, to, if they wanted to, update their voter registration with a driver's license or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. They don't have to. However, the letter that was sent does make it seem like voters who are legacy voters who receive this letter won't be able to vote if they receive the letter. That's not true. You can vote. These legacy voters, it makes, because they were grandfathered in, it makes, you do not have to put in either pieces of information in order to vote in any election. I spoke to the elections director, Tawana Dixon. She said that it has been a bit confusing for some folks who are legacy voters. However, all questions should be directed to the Board of Elections. She said if they didn't want to update this information, they don't have to. They won't be barred from voting. They won't have to use a provisional ballot. They won't have to do any of that. However, one thing she did say is that she can't promise that the State Board of Elections isn't going to continue asking for this information.
So potentially, if they don't update, they might get another letter, and then another letter, or right.
So it's more of like a push to do it. However, it isn't something that if you don't do it, you won't be voting. That's not true. You will be able to vote.
You said questions should be directed to the Board of Elections. Is that the county board or the state board?
The county board of elections. So you can go and you can update that information. It doesn't take long if that's something that a voter wants to do.
In person, right?
In person. You can also, on the letter at the very bottom, there is a little box where you can add your driver's license number or the last 4 digits. And if you want to, you can bring it with you to early voting or to your precinct, and the Board of Elections can accept that and update it there.
Okay.
Or anything like that. So this sort of letter also has the you can mail it in or anything like that. And so there are lots of ways if you want to update your information to do so. However, these legacy voters that are not on that list I mentioned before are pretty much, they're safe. They're good to go. It was just a scary letter.
It was a scary letter. And that's why somebody brought it in, right? Because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to vote.
Yes. Yeah. And Tawana did say that there was a lot of confusion with it. The letter is almost exactly the same as the individuals who are on that list that need to update their ID. She said really what it is, they're just trying to prove you're a citizen. And you live where you say you live, and you are who you say you are. And I think that, however that has now come about is just something that the state is really looking for. And they're going to find different ways to receive that information. And one of those was a letter that maybe made some people a little confused.
Sure. And like you say, there are people who are part of the voter registration repair project that do need to, but it does it. I guess, is there a way for them to distinguish which list they're on? Yeah.
So, I mean, if you do receive this letter and you're not sure, am I a legacy voter? One, you could try to remember, what year did I register? Or you can ask the Board of Elections that question as well. Or there is a link on the Board of Elections website as well as the State Board website that has the full list of everyone across all counties in North Carolina of who is on there. So you can search for yourself, and if your name's not on there, you're like, oop, I got this letter, but my name's not on this, 240,000 number person list. That means probably a legacy voter. Call the Board of Elections just to be sure, and then you should be good to go.
Okay.
But if you are on that list, there are a couple other steps. The provisional ballot is sort of an option for you there if you haven't updated that information. But the story that I wrote about most recently was those legacy voters, which are all okay.
Good to vote.
Good to vote.
All right. So If you have questions for Elena, you can send her an email to elena@thepilot.com. That's elena@thepilot.com. If you have specific questions about your voter registration, you can go to the County Board of Elections website or the State Board of Elections website. Mm-hmm. And it's more likely that you can get more direct answers from them because that's where the records are held. Mm-hmm. And if you have questions for me about the podcast or what we're doing here, you can send those to frank@thepilot.com. That's FRANK@thepilot.com. And that's the latest news in Moore County.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.